Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our last day of this course. We're actually going to just do some meditation, then I'm going to share two topics with you, and then after that, we're going to end our class. And if you guys would like to go to a group lunch or do anything else, you're more than welcome to do that. We typically finish kind of early in this class on Friday. The way that I've been doing meditation is I've been guiding you guys each day in meditation. I started out with guiding you all the way through. Then I kind of eliminated the guidance for the breathing mindfulness meditation, and you guys were doing that on your own. And then I was guiding you on the loving kindness meditation. Well, this morning, what I'm going to do is just do the chanting, and then you do your own meditation yourself. The breathing mindfulness meditation, and if you'd like to do the loving kindness meditation, you can do that yourself with your own affirmations, and then come out of the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then I'm going to end it with the chanting. And then afterwards, that's where we're going to be talking about these topics of the path to enlightenment, practicing the path in the workplace, and the art of the friendly no, how to say no without saying no. So if you guys would like to join for meditation, you're welcome to chant along, and then you're on your own for whatever it is that you would like to do for your meditation, okay? It's kind of like time for you guys to move on and start doing meditation on your own without the teacher's guidance. So yes, to fly, to get out of the nest, right? You're always welcome to come back to the nest, but it's time to fly. Yeah, exactly. All right. So I'm gonna start with the chanting, and then from there, everybody just do whatever you're gonna do for meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava. Excuse me. Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami. Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusram Bhutto Bhagavati. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโอตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Good morning. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. As you know, today's our last day of the course, and we're kind of bringing it to a close. So that's why I mentioned to you guys that I just did meditation with no guidance at all, giving you guys an opportunity to do your own meditation, because that's what you're going to need to be doing from this point forward. And when you're taking classes and stuff like that, I'll be guiding you in meditations. And if you still need guided meditation, it's okay. You can use the recordings online and stuff like that. But this gives you a chance to start meditating without guidance, because that's ultimately what you would like to get to. You would like to get to the point where you only need 3 things to meditate, and you'll have these 3 things with you all the time. You need the body, the mind, and the breath. Those are the only 3 things that you need to meditate. And if you can get your practice to that point where you're just meditating with the body, the mind, and the breath, you'll have those things with you all the time. So if you're walking in the park somewhere and it's like, wow, this is such a beautiful park, I'd like to meditate. Well, if your mind is attached to that special candle or that special phone app or incense or something like that, you can't meditate in that situation. But if you strip out your practice to the point where you only need the body, the mind, and the breath, you can sit down and meditate in that beautiful park that you're walking in, right? Or if you're 3 days into the mountains of Chiang Mai, 3 days away from civilization on a mountain trek, and you've got a backpack and you're camping out and you're like, I'd like to meditate. Hey, you can do that because you got the body, the mind, and the breath. And this is what you would ultimately like to get to. And you'll have this with you all the way through the end of this life. So right now, if you need guidance, that's fine. That's where you're at in your practice. Slowly build up your practice to the point where you don't need guidance any longer. You can just sit down and do it yourself, or lie or stand or walking or whatever position you're going to take. So today I'm going to share with you a few topics here. This first topic is the path to enlightenment, practicing the path in the workplace. Just a really short topic just to help you guys understand how to integrate these teachings into your workplace. Because sometimes people think that their practice of the teachings of the Buddha is only something they do at home, and that's all that they think that it's all about. But if you are only practicing the teachings at home, you actually wouldn't get to enlightenment. In order to be able to get to enlightenment, you need to be training your mind all day long, no matter where you're at, even in the workplace. So there's things that you can do to be able to integrate these teachings into the workplace. Even though your coworkers and your boss and your business partners and your customers aren't practicing these teachings, you can be practicing these teachings. So that way, if you're going to work for 8 hours or however long it is that you go to work each day, you're actually still training your mind. So I'm going to show you how to take the lessons from this class and others and integrate them into your work environment so that you can be practicing the teachings all the time. Just like always, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have microphones here for you guys to ask them here so they'll be able to hear you online. And then those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. So first, just like I've always been sharing at the beginning of each one of these talks, is that you need to acquire wisdom. You're not going to be able to practice any teachings in your workplace if you don't have the wisdom of what the teachings are. You're going to need to understand the Eightfold Path, inside and out, backwards, forwards, left, right, up, down. Some of you guys learned that here in this particular class on Monday, but you're going to need to revisit that multiple times and dial it in closer and closer. Some of you guys, this was a refresher in this class about the Eightfold Path, and you're probably still going to need to visit it again. It's very common to be able to revisit the Eightfold Path 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 times as part of your journey to enlightenment. In fact, this poster that I have hanging up that you can get on your phone, this is a great little refresh for you that in your day-to-day life, as you're going out and about, you can actually look at that on your phone, or if you have it as a wallpaper on your computer or what have you, or if you'd like these little individual boxes, I have them on my phone. I can airdrop them to you, or I can send you them in a message, because one of the things you might need to work on is right speech. And this poster has the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So one of the things you can be doing is you can be looking at that prior to your day at work. You can be looking at the 5 factors of well-spoken speech because you have some important business meetings today, or you're starting a new job and you would like to just be sure that you've got a really fresh memory of what the 5 factors of well-spoken speech is. You can be looking at that. And then you have your conversations in the morning, and then maybe at lunchtime you refresh your memory again for the afternoon. This is what I needed to do for a few weeks as I was bringing my practice up with right speech, is I needed to refresh my memory like this. And I would look at it in the morning, I would sometimes look at it in the afternoon, I would look at it in the evening, and I would reflect on the conversations that I'm about to have and how I would like to speak in these conversations. As I was actually speaking, I would be thinking about the words that I'm saying. And then after I was done speaking, I would reflect on those conversations and see, did I match the 5 factors of well-spoken speech? So you would like to dial in the 5 factors of well-spoken speech very closely. One of the things that the Buddha teaches you is that before you do something, you should reflect, is this going to cause harm to others? Is it going to cause harm to me, or is it going to cause harm to both? And he says, if you reflect on something that you're about to do, and it's either going to cause harm to others, to you, or to both, you should refrain from doing that thing. You should stop. You should not do that thing. And then he says, while you're doing something, like while you're speaking, you should be reflecting. Is it causing harm to others, harm to me, or harm to both? And if it is, whether it's a verbal action or a bodily action or a mental action, you should refrain from doing that. And then after you do something, he says you should reflect. Did that cause harm to others? Did it cause harm to me? Or did it cause harm to both? And if it did, then you should never do that thing ever again, right? So this is the way that you can build up your wisdom, is look at whether you're harming other individuals or not, through your speech, through your actions, and through the way you interact in the world. And you can use this to build up your wisdom. Of course, you need to take classes and read books and talk to teachers and stuff like this, but you can also be refreshing your memory as you're going prior to your workday, during your workday, and even after your workday. And this will help you to build up your wisdom. Then you're going to need to build a practice of meditation and generosity. Your breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation are two meditations that I taught you in this class and helped you to build up throughout the course. And you're going to need to practice generosity as well. The breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Because if you go into your work environment with a bunch of craving, longing, and yearning, you're going to have difficulties. It's going to produce unwholesome results. It's also helping you to cultivate the mindfulness or awareness of mind and your concentration. These are two qualities that you need in the work environment too, to have awareness of your mind and to be able to have concentration so you can focus on your day-to-day task. So doing breathing mindfulness meditation consistently 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, this is going to be very beneficial for you. And then the loving kindness meditation as well. If you're going to have a loving kindness meditation session, usually out of your 2 or 3 sessions in a day, you would like at least one of them to be loving kindness. And if you're doing this in the morning, this works out really well because you start your day with a bunch of loving kindness in the mind. So you can go out into your workday being loving and kind in the way that you interact with people. Doesn't mean you can't do a loving kindness session in the middle of the day or the evening. It just means if you're only going to put it in one place, you might find the morning is really helpful because that's where you can kind of fill up the gas tank and then go out into your day and be loving and kind. And then let's just say at 4 p.m., you're getting off work, something happens, you notice frustration and anger arising. Even though you were planning to do breathing mindfulness meditation that evening, maybe you need to do some loving kindness meditation. So make your decisions about what type of meditation you're going to do in the present moment. You don't have to have this, standard plan that you always stick to this particular schedule. You need to be observant of the mind with your mindfulness and see what does the mind need. And if you're noticing a bunch of agitation, a bunch of annoyance, a bunch of anger in a given time, you might make all 3 of your sessions loving kindness for maybe a week or 2 to knock down that anger. That's where your mindfulness comes in, and that's where your wisdom of knowing the path that you can see the symptoms in the mind that there's anger, and now you're going to bring in whatever antidote or whatever prescription you need. And in this case with anger, it's going to be loving kindness meditation. So you're going to need to be in the present moment and make wise decisions as you're going throughout your day. The generosity is also helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. When you're giving and sharing, this is going to help you to let go of craving, desire, attachment, where you don't want anything in return. There's no expectation. And you're doing this where you're sharing your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. You can be practicing generosity in the workplace. But remember, you need to do this with equanimity, right? If you brought in a milkshake for your favorite employee and you've got 5 employees, the other 4 are going to get jealous, right? You need to treat everybody equally and everybody fairly. But you can share your time as well, right? Like maybe there's some task that one of your coworkers are doing. You have some free time. Maybe you help them out with the task that they're working on. This is practicing generosity in the workplace too. So you can practice generosity in the workplace, and you're going to need to do that in your workplace. If you have a large company, maybe you're in a large company, maybe there's 200 employees, and you'd like to practice some generosity, maybe you're bringing in a cake or something like this. You probably can't purchase enough cake for 200 employees perhaps, and not all of them are going to be interested in cake anyway because of the universal truth of impermanence. So maybe what you do in order to treat everybody equally is you kind of send out an email to the company, hey, at 12 o'clock at lunchtime, I'm going to put a cake in the conference room. Anybody who would like a piece, feel free to come get this, right? Feel free to help yourself. You're invited to have this cake. So that way, maybe if you have enough cake for 20 or 30 people, whoever comes, they're going to be able to get it. And now it's fair because you've made it available to everybody, but everybody knows that, hey, it's going in there at 12 o'clock. So if you came at 12:30 and there's no cake, okay, that was your decision. That was their decision. But your decision was to practice generosity with everybody in the company. So this is the way you can treat everybody fairly without actually spending an absorbent amount of money or carrying lots of cakes into your company or something like that, right? So you can practice generosity with your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. And you would like to do this fairly as you're sharing with the people in your work environment. You can eliminate complacency. This is part of the path to enlightenment, that the Buddha teaches you that complacency is a hindrance to your enlightenment. that if you're complacent, meaning you're dull and you're lethargic, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. If you kind of delay meditating, if you delay coming to classes, if you decide not to come to the temple, not to read books, not to meditate, of course, you're not going to get to enlightenment. That's what complacency is. The Buddha not only talks about complacency in those terms, but he talks about complacency all the way to the level that if you're walking down the street, for example, and there's an unwholesome thought that comes up in your mind and you do nothing about it, he says this is complacency. Right? Because what you're taught is with your mindfulness, you're aware of any thoughts that go through your mind, and then you would like to cut those off and let them go. If you have unwholesome thoughts in your day-to-day life, you would like to cut those off and let them go. So if you're walking down the street and you start judging somebody else, and you start looking down on them, and you allow that judgment to stay in your mind, that's complacency. Or if you're walking down the street and you have an unwholesome thought that comes up in your mind, maybe you want to punch somebody, or maybe you have hatred or anger or frustration that comes up. If you allow that to reside in the mind's just going to stay wired that way. You would like to cut that off and let it go and purify the mind. So if you do nothing about that unwholesome thought, that's complacency. So you would like to be able to root out all complacency, whether it's just delaying meditation or not reading, not coming to the temple, but also allowing unwholesome thoughts to exist in the mind. That's complacency as well. But you can take these lessons of the path to enlightenment and you can apply it to your work, right? If you have certain work projects or certain tasks that you're involved in and you're responsible to do that at work, if you're complacent with that, it's going to cause difficulties and challenges for you and for others in your work environment. So you like to eliminate complacency, or some people might call this procrastination, right? You would like to be diligent and dedicated and determined with your work. If you have a deadline at, say, 5 p.m. Friday, there's no reason why you have to wait until 4:30 or 4:59 to turn that in, right? You could actually get on top of that and turn it in on Wednesday or Thursday. And the boss is like, wow, they're really on top of the ball here. They did a really good quality job and they got their work in way ahead of schedule, right? This is like really helpful for you. So don't allow the complacency to set in, even though you've got this long period of time to do your project. You don't know what impermanence you're going to face. So maybe you get a project on Monday, you know it's only going to take you 3 hours to do it. And maybe you delay. And maybe on Friday you get a flat tire, maybe you get sick or whatever, and now you miss your deadline. Where instead you could just jump right on that project, start addressing it on Monday or Tuesday, and maybe even be done with it by Wednesday or Thursday. No need to just kind of delay and wait until Friday to start working on that project. Because if you can get your work done sooner, then hey, you've got bandwidth to be able to help your friends, practice generosity, help your coworkers, do other tasks. It's really helping you to keep your mind relaxed, because if you put your mind up against the wall, then you put your mind up against this deadline, then you might notice the stress and the anxiety starting to arise. So if you take care of your task very early on, then you don't have to be thinking about that. You don't have to worry about that. You can just knock it out and be done with it and on to the next thing. It's important to practice right livelihood. This is something that I taught you as part of the Eightfold Path. There's multiple levels of right livelihood that you would like to learn. A livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life. And the Buddha teaches you as part of the Eightfold Path to practice a livelihood that doesn't cause harm to others. And he gives you guidance on this. So I'll speak to you and help you understand what right livelihood is, even though we talked about it on Monday. Some of you guys weren't here on Monday. So what right livelihood is where you practice a livelihood that isn't going to cause harm to others. And there's two levels of purification. The first fold of purification is that you're not causing harm through your livelihood and your choice about your livelihood. The Buddha gives us these livelihoods here that he shares that these would cause harm to others. If you have business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, or poisons, any of those livelihoods are going to cause harm to others, and therefore harm is going to come to you. Now remember, the Buddha's teachings are independently verifiable. You can take these and independently verify them. So you take one like substances that cause heedlessness. If I stood on the street corner and I sold crystal methamphetamine into the community, I'm causing harm to the community. They're getting addicted to the substance. People are going out and robbing and stealing. They're depleting their life savings to be able to give me money because they're addicted to this substance. And now standing on the street corner, because I'm causing harm in the community, harm is very likely to come to me. I can get beat up. I can get robbed. I can get murdered. I can get arrested. I can get addicted to my own substance. I can have all kinds of problems like this standing on the street corner. And you need to remember that this natural law of Gotama that the Buddha is teaching you about these 5 livelihoods, it's not just about the governmental laws, because the government in most places says it's illegal to stand on the street corner and sell crystal methamphetamine or heroin into the community. But some governments, it's okay if you would like to sell alcohol, right? If you were a cashier at a liquor store, they say, oh, we're not going to arrest you for that, right? Go be a cashier in a liquor store. Well, if you understand the natural law of Gotama, which is functioning at a much higher level than human laws and human society, you might come to realize that it's unwise to go work at that liquor store, because those places are places where people tend to get robbed, they get beat up, they get murdered. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele, and now you've got to deal with that, each day when you go to work. So you might think about these kinds of things that don't just look at the human laws, because human laws are imperfect. They're created by human beings, so they can't be created and administered fairly. Even though we should always aspire for that, it's not possible for human laws to be created and administered equally and fairly in all situations, because human beings are prone to mistakes. But this natural law of Gotama is functioning and is showing you your wise and unwise decisions all the time. So something like selling substances that cause heedlessness, if you understand that alcohol is a substance that causes heedlessness, and working as a cashier at a liquor store, it would be unwise, right? And you may choose not to do that. So you're going to need to look at these 5 livelihoods and make sure you're not doing one of those, because that's going to ensure you're not causing harm. But then the Buddha gives you guidance on how you perform your livelihood. He talks about whether you do scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain. I don't have it up here, but typically when I'm teaching right livelihood, I'll teach this. What scheming is like corruption. So say I was a politician. It's not one of these 5 livelihoods here. It's not business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances cause heedlessness, and poisons. I'm not causing any harm by choosing to be the mayor of a town or by writing laws. I'm not causing any harm. But if I was corrupt or I was scheming, this is causing harm. And now 10 or 15 years into my career, people find out that I'm corrupt, and now I can't get reelected, and now I can't earn a living as a politician any longer, right? So that's what scheming is. Like if you were a police officer or somebody like this and you were scheming or corrupt, this is going to affect your career. The next one he talks about is flattery. He says it would be unwise to do flattery in your livelihood. What this is like giving insincere comments to people just to get them to purchase things from you, or like your business partners. Like maybe you have a customer come into your store and you're like, oh, those earrings look so great on you. You are so beautiful. Those earrings look amazing. People must really talk to you about how beautiful you are all the time. By the way, I have these other earrings over here that'll look really good on you also. Right? Like this is just flattering somebody to try to get them to purchase something. Or I have this great purse that'll go really well with your earrings. Come take a look at it. Right? This is what sometimes people do. And if you've ever been in that situation, you probably don't feel comfortable purchasing anything from that environment. So if you're looking to build up your Gotama, which means your wholesome results, you're going to need to be sincere with people and really be honest and trustworthy with your customers, whether it's in an environment where you're selling products or services, or you're providing a service. You would like to eliminate any kind of flattery, just insincere comments, in order to get people to like you or to purchase things from you. The Buddha talks about hinting. What hinting is where you're unclear about your work. So if I was maybe on a project team, like all of us were on a project team, and we're going in to brief the boss about our project, it would be wise for us to be clear, concise, and precise about our update of our project. Where if we go in there and we're unclear, we're hinting around, we're not really getting to the point, this is not going to go well for us in our livelihood. The Buddha also talks about belittling, where belittling is where you're degrading or diminishing the people around you, like your coworkers, your business partners, or your competition. If you're doing this, your customers aren't going to appreciate that, and you're going to find that it's not going to help you in your livelihood. So if you're degrading people in your livelihood, belittling them, even your competition. Sometimes people think that that's what we should do. Like if we're in business, we should talk bad about our competition because it makes us look better. And now this customer will purchase from us. But that's actually working against you. It's unwise to actually do that. So the Buddha teaches you to not belittle people. And then he teaches that it would be unwise to pursue gain with gain. What this is where you're just taking a job for a paycheck. You really don't care about the work. You don't really care about the product or the service. It doesn't have any significance for you in terms of what it is that you're doing day to day. You're not really motivated or enthused about the work that you're doing, and you're just doing it for the money, and that's all you care about. Well, that craving for the money is going to eventually burn out, and you're going to feel miserable at that work, right? So if you get a job like making a really high salary, sure, you might take that job because you're really excited about the work, or excited about the money. But then once you get in that job, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, the money doesn't matter anymore. It's just so boring and mundane that now you drag yourself to work every day and you feel miserable going to work every day. So the Buddha teaches you to have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation behind your livelihood. So this is what's called the first fold of purification of your livelihood, that you eliminate any of the 5 livelihoods like business and weapons, meat, living beings, the substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, that you would like to eliminate that. And then you would like to eliminate scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. If you eliminate those things, you've gotten to the first fold of purification with your livelihood. But then he has what's called the second fold of purification. What this is where none of the pollutions of the 10 fetters are involved in your selection of your livelihood. That sometimes we choose a livelihood based on the pollutions of our mind. I'll give you some examples of this, okay? Because by the time you get to a right livelihood that's fully purified, you'll be enthused and motivated and have ambition about your livelihood. You'll get to the point where you would do this job even if you didn't get paid for it. You enjoy it that much. So let me give you an example of a job that you're doing that is involving the pollutions of mind. So there's these 10 pollutions that the Buddha talks about. They're called the 10 fetters. And if your mind has these 10 pollutions, which every unenlightened being will to a certain degree, that you're going to experience discontentedness. You're going to experience the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings. And you're going to be making decisions based in these pollutions, and it's going to lead to unwholesome results. But when you get these pollutions out of the way and you eliminate them, that's where the mind's enlightened. You'll be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Your mind will be focused. You'll have concentration. You'll have clarity of mind and deep memory. Your personal, professional relationships will really blossom. They'll be at ease. And you'll notice you're not even in a bad mood anymore. There's many benefits with moving the mind to enlightenment and purifying it because the mind's now performing optimally. But let's just say that I'm maybe 18, 20, 25 years old, and I have a lot of ego in my mind, and I really want to show my power and my might. Right? Maybe I decide I'm going to go get a job as a police officer because I want to throw people around and slap handcuffs on them and, show my dominance, right? Well, now I go get that job, and now I've got all that ego, and I'm throwing people up against cars, I'm handcuffing them, I'm slapping them around, and I really like this because it's this power and this dominance, right? But now over time, I start learning and practicing these teachings, and I start training my mind. And this conceit or this arrogance or this pride starts coming out of the mind, and I start eliminating my ego. And now more and more, I don't like this job because I'm becoming more loving, and I'm becoming more kind, I'm becoming more compassionate, where I have concern for the misfortune of others. And I realized that while I took this job when I was maybe 25 years old, now I'm 30, 35 years old, I'm not interested in this job anymore. What I really liked once I got this ego out of the mind, what I realized was really motivating my decisions is I enjoy helping people. And that's what I really enjoy. And maybe I decide to go be a social worker or a mental health therapist or something like this. And maybe now I've completely changed my livelihood where my ego is not involved. I'm not really making the decision for any other reason than I'm just interested in helping people. And that's all I'm interested in. And now, sure, I'm getting paid for this job and I'm enjoying the work, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm not getting hurt. Me, myself, as a police officer, I was getting punched and bitten and poked in the eyes, and all these unwholesome results were coming from me to me because of my unwise choice. But now this other choice over here, now I'm completely at peace because I go to work every day and I help people and I'm not getting poked and punched and bitten by other people, right? So this is like an example where an individual is now moving to a right livelihood for them where their ego is not involved. But that's not to say that being a police officer is not a right livelihood, because there could be another person who's a police officer who doesn't have ego, right? Who is doing this because this is what they truly enjoy, and they're doing it in a wise way and in a respectful way. So it's not to say that every police officer would be unwise to be a police officer, because you could be a police officer and do this job in a respectful and polite and wonderful way, right? So this is just an example for you of one particular example of someone who might have taken a job as a police officer with a bunch of ego. But now once you get those pollutions out of the mind, now the mind can come into its own and select a livelihood that's going to be more in line with the teachings and more in line with their ability to be peaceful and joyful in their day-to-day life. So there's these two folds of purification, where the first one is practicing the things that I taught you, and then the second fold is getting rid of any pollutions of mind, where your mind can come into this environment where you're working at a job that you thoroughly enjoy, you're motivated, you have ambition and enthusiasm. When your feet hit the ground each morning, it's like, all right, let's go to work. Right? Instead of like, oh, I got to go to work. Oh, I really don't want to go. Right? Like if this is the way that you're thinking about your work, it's not a right livelihood. You're dragging yourself to work each day and you're not going to experience peace and joy, right? Because you're trying to get to this peace and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're living the ideal life, whether it's your friends or your family, whether it's your work or where you live or what you choose to do on a day-to-day basis. You're going to enjoy every single aspect of your life. There's no part of your life that you don't enjoy. So this idea that work has to be something that we hate, that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. That's what people do, and they feel disgruntled and irritated and annoyed. But if you go around here in Thailand, you'll see people standing on the street corner selling mango and sticky rice, and they're just so happy, and they're just enjoying themselves so much, and they just really enjoy sharing their mango and sticky rice, and they do it really, really well, and they're so enthused about it. In fact, they do it so well, they only open 4 hours a day, and they sell out of all their mango and sticky rice because they have a line waiting for their mango and sticky rice, right? So you've got to find your mango and sticky rice. What's your mango and sticky rice? What are you going to be there doing that you enjoy so much and so thoroughly that you do it day in and day out, and you do it with a smile, and you do it so cheerfully? That's what you're going to need to find. And right now you might not know what that is. It might take you some time to work at that and figure that out. If you're young, you might have to experience a bunch of different jobs and a bunch of different environments before you figure out exactly what your mango and sticky rice is, right? So if you can find your mango and sticky rice, you'll be thoroughly fulfilled, right? So this is what the Buddha teaches on practicing right livelihood, ensuring you're not causing harm to others and getting to the point where you have nothing but enthusiasm and ambition about the work that you do on each individual day. Okay, so now this is what the Buddha actually teaches. These are his words. This is what I just taught you with the 5 livelihoods that would cause harm, and these are the ones that of how you perform your livelihood: scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. So I just taught it to you, but this is showing you the actual words of the Buddha with the reference back to his original teachings in the Pali Canon. So that way you have confidence that what I just taught you is what the Buddha actually taught. And you'll see this in the book too. In the first book, in chapter 5, you'll see it in there. And if you're looking for the deeper teachings on the second fold of purification, it's in volume 12, chapter 14. 14. So if you're either in between jobs and looking to get a job, or if you're in a job that you're not completely satisfied with, you might look at volume 12, chapter 14. That's where you'll see the full teachings from the Buddha and from me about right livelihood and how to bring your livelihood up to the point where you can be thoroughly enthused and motivated and have ambition about your work. But this is the first fold of purification here. Okay, so now, in terms of being at work, one of the things you guys learned is right concentration. On Monday, I taught you to just do one thing at a time, to practice singleness of mind. And that's what's going to promote more and more health in your mind. The way that you would like to do this is I'll just teach you about right concentration first. Is what right concentration is where you're practicing your breathing mindfulness meditation and you're practicing singleness of mind. So that say you're washing the dishes, if your mind wanders, you would like to cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to washing dishes. Or if you're in a business meeting and your mind wanders, you would like to cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to your breath. As you do this more and more, you'll develop concentration and focus. It's kind of like having a piece of wood and a steel rod. If you grind this back and forth enough, eventually it's going to create a groove, and it's going to be so deep in the groove, it's not going to pop out. But initially, when you start first grinding the steel rod across this wood, it's going to bounce around a lot. So your mind might be bouncing around a lot. If you've been taught to multitask or something like that, you might be bouncing your mind around. And then when you get home, you find it very challenging to be relaxed. You might feel stress or anxiety when you come home from work. It's kind of like a racehorse that's been taught to run around a track. When it goes to the barn, it can't relax. It jumps. It's got all this anxiety in the mind. It's got all this hyperactivity in the mind because it's just been racing around the track. And that's all it's been taught to do. So if you take your mind and you're bouncing around, you're not actually truly multitasking. You're actually doing one thing at a time, but you're rapidly cycling your mind. You're doing one thing for 3 seconds, another thing for 5 seconds, another thing for 10 seconds, and your mind's rapidly cycling. So you would like to get to the point where you're just doing one thing at a time. And this is what's going to help you to develop your concentration. So your breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to do that on a daily, consistent basis. It's like taking your mind to the gym and exercising the mind because you're focused on the breath. And anytime it moves off, you bring your mind back to the breath. But what you would also like to do is do this in daily life, that if you're washing the dishes and you know your mind's moving off from the task at hand, cut that off and let it go and come back to the task at hand. Or if you're on the conversation with your mom on the phone and you see your mind wandering, cut that off and bring the mind back. So because you would need to be practicing this in your personal life, you need to also be practicing this in your work life too. So you can have this piece of wood and this steel rod where you're rubbing it back and forth and you get a deeper and deeper groove in the wood. And eventually your mind won't pop out. Then you can be focused and clear all the time. That's what you'll be able to do once you train your mind and you refine it and hone it in this way. So if you're in a situation where you're at work, understanding that your mind can only do one thing at a time, if you're typing out an email on your computer and one of your coworkers comes by and like, hey, I need to talk to you. The last thing you're interested in doing is sitting there, yep, what did you say? Continue to type your email and then chat with your coworker too. What you would like to do is either stop your email and talk to your coworker, right? Or you can say, one moment, I'm almost done with this email, just give me a second. And then you finish up your email and then you send it, right? Or you hit save or whatever it is. You're not interested in continuing to type out your email and talk to the person who's walked by your office. This is going to make your mind split back and forth. And what you're going to notice if you do it that way is more and more people are going to be showing up to your office and constantly trying to get your attention. Whereas if you pause your email and talk to them, or if you ask them to pause and you're going to finish up your email, what you'll notice is people will start approaching you more and more respectfully, and people won't be constantly distracting you away from whatever it is that you're doing. I had to do this with my son because I take appointments at home in my room. I have a desk inside my bedroom and I talk with students on Zoom. And there were times where my son would just barge into the room and he would start talking to me while I was sitting there in a meeting with a student, right? And I would have to pause him. I would say, one moment. And then I would like continue to talk to the student. Or I just would ignore him sometimes. When he would walk in and barge into my room and start, Dad, I need your help. I've got this problem. My batteries in my remote control car aren't working. I need you right now, right? Like in his mind, this was an emergency. His batteries in his remote control car weren't working. But I was talking with a student and they had scheduled an appointment, and this was a 1-hour appointment, and we were deep in conversation. I was helping a student maybe with some personal problem that they were having. So I wasn't interested in going to do that. So I would just keep talking. And then slowly but surely he learned that when he comes into the room, Dad's not going to just focus on what it is that he was wanting me to do. So there were times where he would come in and he would just stand there and wait patiently. And then I would just keep talking and talking and talking. And then after a little while, I could break and say, yes, Bailan, what do you need? And then he would say, oh, Mom's downstairs. She needs this, that, or the other thing. And we're getting ready to leave. And if we don't have this thing, we can't get our passport from the government or whatever it is. Oh, okay, I've got that thing right here. Here you go. And he learned to be patient. And in some cases, he would come in and he would see me talking and he would just leave because he knew that what he had to talk about wasn't important. So you're going to be teaching the people around you, your coworkers and your boss and other people, based on your actions, based on the decisions you make. You're teaching them how to interact with you. So if they barge into your office and you address them right away, they're going to learn like, oh, I can barge into her office anytime I want and she's going to talk to me, or he's going to talk to me, right? If you're on the phone and they barge into your office, they're going to just keep doing it if you put down the phone and start addressing them. So you're teaching the people around you how to interact with you all the time. So if you keep this in mind, that you would like to practice singleness of mind because this is what's beneficial for you, then also understand that you're teaching people how to interact with you. You would like to just do one thing at a time. Don't get angry. Don't have expectations of how they should interact with you, but you just make wise decisions about your own practice, about how you're interested in interacting with other people. And for me, I'm interested in interacting with one person at a time. So when I'm talking to a student on Zoom, that's what I'm doing. When my son comes in, I don't address him. He just stands there, right? And now when I'm done, if he's still standing there after 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, whenever we're done with that portion of our conversation, if he's still standing there, it must be something important. So now I'll address that, right? So you're teaching the people around you how to interact with you. So you like to just do one thing at a time. Practicing singleness of mind, and gradually training the mind. This is going together with that one that I was just talking about. Interacting with one person at a time, like I was just talking about. And the reason why is you're trying to get to this here, that when your mind is calm, you will have mindfulness or awareness of mind. When you have awareness of mind, you will then have concentration or focus and clarity. And when you have focus and clarity, you can access your wisdom and you can make wise decisions in any given situation. But when you have an uncalm mind, when your mind's shaken up, you won't have mindfulness. You won't have awareness of mind. So therefore, you're not going to have concentration or focus or clarity, and you're not going to be able to access your wisdom. So you're going to be making unwise decisions that lead to further unwholesome results. This isn't a work example, but I'll give you this example, right? Let's just say you got a phone call that your mom was in the back of an ambulance and she's being rushed to the hospital. She's been in a terrible car accident. Well, if your mind's all uncalm and all shaken up, you don't have mindfulness, you don't have concentration, you can't use your wisdom to go to the hospital and talk to the doctors and nurses and make wise decisions for your mom. You're going to make the situation worse. You might grab your keys and run across town and get into a car accident yourself. But if you can maintain your calmness and composure, now you can have mindfulness or awareness of mind. Then you can have concentration. Then you can make wise decisions. And you know the last thing you're interested in doing is getting in your car and running across town. Take your time. Show up to the hospital with a calm mind. Talk to the doctors and nurses. Take in that information and now start making wise decisions. So it's the same thing at work. right? This is the reason why you would like to just do one thing at a time and address one person at a time. Because if you're trying to do multiple things at a time, your mind's all shaken up in that situation and you're going to make mistakes. And those mistakes have bigger ramifications when you're in the work environment, right? If you were a doctor or a nurse and you're making mistakes, you could actually kill somebody, right? Someone could actually die and you could be in jail for the rest of your life. Right? This is what can happen with certain jobs. But even if you were a business consultant and, nobody's life is at risk here, but still you could be making decisions that are unwise, that don't allow you to get a promotion or that don't allow you to get to that next project that's going to help you build more skills to then build your career from that point forward. So by maintaining your calmness and composure at work, you'll have your mindfulness, your concentration, you'll be able to access your wisdom, make wise decisions in the work environment, and now your career and your profession can just grow and grow and grow. Okay, so this is the reason why that you would like to do just one thing at a time, is because it leads to these wise decisions that's going to then produce wholesome outcomes or wholesome Gotama for you. Okay. This is the Eightfold Path, and this is something that I teach in all the classes and all the retreats that I teach, because it's a core central teaching of the Buddha, and you would need to know it inside and out, backwards and forwards, to really make progress on the path to enlightenment. So each one of these steps have certain things that you learn behind here based on the words of the Buddha. This is the plan of exactly how to train your mind to get to enlightenment. And as you learn more and more of this plan and you implement it in your life, that's where you're going to see the results. You dial this in closer and closer and closer. But even though the Buddha teaches you certain things behind here in order to train your mind, and you're going to need to know that, there's certain lessons from this that you can apply to your day-to-day work. So here's some things that you can think about. When you learn right view, you learn about the Four Noble Truths and how the mind is experiencing discontentedness. The cause of that is craving, desire, attachment. The elimination is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and the path forward is the Eightfold Path. Essentially, one of the things the Buddha is teaching you is to accept responsibility for any feelings that you're having. Any feelings that you experience, like anger or sadness or frustration or annoyance or anything like that, it's coming from your own mind, right? So he's teaching you that craving, desire, attachment is the cause of discontentedness. And it's through eliminating craving, desire, attachment that will eliminate that. But underlying all of that, what he's really teaching you as well is to accept responsibility for your own feelings and your own emotions. So you can apply that to your work, to accept and acknowledge responsibilities for your projects and assignments. Everything that you experience is a result of your decisions, where sometimes in a work environment, maybe you don't accept responsibility. Maybe you blame delays on your coworkers or your business partners. Don't do those kinds of things, because it's going to just hinder you from being able to be successful at work. You can accept responsibility for your work and your assignments, and then understand that anything you're experiencing is a result of the decisions that you're making. And this will help you to practice more and more right view and be responsible at work to be able to perform very well. Then remember, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood from the Eightfold Path. This is going to help you to practice in your day-to-day life. That right intention is the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Then I talked to you about right speech, about eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, frivolous speech, practicing speaking at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, with a mind of loving kindness. I went through all of those things about how to not cause harm through any communication, not just your speech, but your text messages, email, social media. We talked about all that on Monday. And then we talked about right action, not causing harm through your bodily actions, right? And then there's right livelihood, which is what we just talked about. So you're going to need to cultivate this moral conduct within your relationships at work so that you're practicing in a way that's harmless. If you're harming your coworkers or your business partners or your customers through your speech or actions or anything like that, it's going to just come back and harm you. So you'd like to purify your moral conduct and be practicing this not only in your personal life, but in your business life as well. And then remember, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is where you're cultivating your mental discipline, being able to control your mind. If you're in a situation where you can't control your mind at work, this is not going to go well for you, right? So if there's things that are happening at work, you're going to need to control your mind. I'll give you an example of this. When I was in business, one time we had a customer that came to pay for their massage because I was in the massage business, and they were at the front desk, and their credit card kept being declined and declined and declined and declined. And they were getting angry. They were getting upset because this was their dad's credit card, and their dad was paying for their massage. And they were getting so angry at their dad because their dad hadn't done what they needed to do. Of course, it's their craving, desire, attachment that was causing their anger, but they looked at it as it was coming from their dad. So this person was getting more and more angry, and eventually she just bolted and left out of the business without paying, right? And I was kind of like walking behind her, and I said, "Ma'am, we need you to pay. We need you to pay your service before you leave." I was like, "This is against the law if you leave." And she's like, "I don't care." And she just barged out of the business and like left, right? Well, I sat there for a moment. I thought about, what are my options? What should I do? We have all of our clients' profile, their data. We have their name, we have their phone number, we have their address, we have their, all the details about them. We have their birthday and everything. And I was like, you know what? I think I should call the police. So we ended up calling the police, and the police came, right? But I needed to think about this first, like, what should I do? I didn't just rush and make a decision, but I took my time. I calmly explained to the police what happened. They called her on the phone, they sorted it out, and she ultimately ended up coming and paying. But I wasn't, aggressive with this person. I wasn't hostile. My mind was calm and collected, and I was able to handle the situation, and it came to a good resolution. And then ultimately, we decided to ban her from the business. It was the only person we had ever done this with. We banned her from the business because she was so bitter and so hostile to the employees, and the other customers were there. She was shouting and screaming, and we were like, it probably doesn't make sense for this person to come back into the business. I'm not interested in my employees going through this situation again, because next time I might not be here when this happens, and I happened to be in the business when this was happening. So we decided to ban her from coming into the company anymore and receiving services. So these are things that you can calmly think about and decide, what are you going to do in these situations? And of course, she wrote a review online that we were so horrible and we were so bad and we treated her so miserable and all these other kind of things, but we kind of knew that was going to happen, right? So you're going to need to think through your decisions, and having this mental discipline to be calm and collected and figure out what's wise or unwise. This is what's going to help you to do that when you can have control and discipline of your own mind. Okay, so I think that's the last thing. Yeah. Any questions on this particular topic of practicing the teachings in the workplace? For those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. Okay, let's see what we've got here. We got something on YouTube. Janae's asking, what are some of the examples of business and living beings? So human trafficking, slaves, prostitution. If somebody was selling living beings like animals, like if you're breeding animals and then you're selling them, this is living and sustaining your life off of the womb of this animal, right? So any kind of thing that deals with the final product is a being, a living being. So these are the kind of things that the Buddha is teaching you there. Living beings, even like fighting, like animal fighting or humans fighting, these kinds of things are all business and living beings. Okay, let me see if we have any in Facebook. Okay, thank you, sir or ma'am, for sharing. Somebody said they were sharing our talk. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. You have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess this is more of a confirmation than a question, but so when we talk about the purification of the right livelihood, like the 5 things that we should not do, I think sometimes it's against the social norm that we think flattery or corruption or things like that will help we build a better career because that's the social norm. So is it right that the Buddha will think, actually practicing these 5 ways of purification will only help your career get better? Is that the kind of understanding?
Yeah, that's what he's doing, is he's showing you the natural laws of existence, and then it's up to you to not believe those, but to learn them, investigate them, examine them, like part of what we're doing here, and you might need to do some more of that. Then there's reflection, to reflect on whether this is true or false. And that was kind of the examples that I was giving you. That's the reflection. But then you start practicing it, and that's where you see your progress. That's where you see the results. And then by the time you get to the end of that, now you've got wisdom. You're like, yes, this is the truth, because I was doing these things before and my career was just kind of but now I learned, I reflected, and now I'm practicing, and wow, look at all this progress, look at all this success. And that's how you know that what he's teaching you is the truth. And you get to the point where you have no doubt that what he's teaching is the truth. And now you know the wisdom of the natural laws, because you've learned, reflected, and practiced, and you saw the result as part of this. Mm-hmm. Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, it was kind of related to that question, but it was about hinting in particular. So I was just thinking about like CEOs of publicly traded companies, and the how there is this norm of, and also maybe fiduciary expectation to present certain narratives that align with the organization's interests, which might involve withholding information, distorting information, and so on. And that seems to be something that is legally and socially kind of normed now. That's my
legally and socially what?
Normed, so
okay.
Or expected.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a bit, because in society, you're going to see all kinds of things that are transpiring, and they may or may not be wise. And it may even be a government law that this government's saying you have to do this thing, right? And you look at it and you're like, whoa, that's really unwise for me to do that, right? And this is where you need to have the wisdom, right? Because if you conform to what society's doing, you'll just stay stuck in the darkness with everybody else. The analogy that I think you heard me describe when we went on the temple tour with the lotus flower, this journey, for those of you guys that haven't been on the tour with me, there's lotus flowers all over the Buddhist culture. And we use this as symbolism to symbolize your journey to enlightenment. And the reason why is because a lotus flower has roots deep down into the earth, and it's holding on to the earth. And then it has to grow this strong stalk rising through the murkiness of the water. And then it blooms into a lotus flower. It rises above the water and blooms. This is what you need to do, because your mind is holding on to the world. It's holding on to the world, maybe in some cases conforming to what other people are doing, but you need to grow this strong stalk, this strong practice, this wisdom of the path to enlightenment of these natural laws. You need to grow this strong wisdom. And what you're doing is you're moving past the murkiness of the world. The world is into all this murkiness. They're going to be killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, taking intoxicants and substances that cause heedlessness, and any number of things. You're going to see ego and conceit and all these different things in the world. You're going to see people practicing a wrong livelihood, right? But you need to be able to have the wisdom to know what is wise and unwise, even as it relates to a business, and then rise above this. So that question, I don't know her name. What's your friend's name? Jesse. So Jesse was asking that question about business the other day, about how can I practice equanimity in the business world? And that's where a teacher can help you and guide you and show you how to apply these teachings no matter where you're practicing. And you would like to be able to see that wisdom more and more clearly, so you're not conforming to what others do, because there could be something that's a common business practice, but it's unwise to actually do it. And you would like to be able to see that and then rise above it, and then choose to practice differently, even though other people might be doing it a different way. And this is actually going to promote better improvement in your career, because even though people are doing it this way, they have no idea of this better way to do it. And when you start doing it that way, you're going to meet with all this success. And then eventually your way is going to become the common practice, because people are going to be like, wow, look at that person. They're so successful. Let's all start doing it that way. And this was my experience when I was in the massage field, that when I got into the massage field, I was doing things very differently than what was common practice. And then the more that people saw me becoming successful, they started doing it the same way as me, and that became the common practice. So you're going to need to be able to see what is wise and unwise and not conform to what other people are doing, so that you can rise above all the murkiness, and then you'll be able to be experiencing the wholesome results of your wise decisions. John, you have a question?
What about compromise? Like, I've been doing work that I think is all on the right livelihood path consciously for about a decade, working for animal rights groups, among other things. And like, if there's interesting positions, say with a big supermarket chain or with pharmaceutical companies, such as I have avoided in the past, and they're not specifically like dealing with, say, meat, but it's one of the things that they're doing, right? It's a huge supermarket. They have everything. They're all over in many countries, blah, blah, blah. And pharmaceutical companies have ethical problems of their own, but like one of them would be animal testing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you can apply this reasoning on many sectors of business. Like they're not straight in the line of wrong here. My hunch says, like, it's like, I've been listening in, I'm attracted to some of the tasks involved, but it still doesn't sit right with me. And I think that's for a reason, but I'm interested to hear your take.
Yeah, it's important to look at what the core business is, not necessarily how they're performing it. I mean, in terms of who you choose to interact with, you would like to look at how they're performing it. But in terms of you selecting a livelihood for you to do, being a pharmacist, for example, you're not causing any harm in that situation because you're not practicing one of these 5, right? You're not, back up. Oops. Let me back up. So you can see it's not practicing one of these 5, right? The substances that cause heedlessness, that's not what the idea of a pharmacist is. Even though some of those substances, people get addicted to them, that's not the goal of those medications. So as a pharmacist, you're practicing a right livelihood. If the pharmaceutical company that is choosing to design these medications, if they're doing things that are unethical, those are decisions that those people are making. But you're not involved in those decisions. Your decision, and that's the only thing that can create Gotama for you, is your decisions. Your decision is, I'm going to do this job as a pharmacist. Or if you work at something else, you need to be able to look at, am I causing any harm in this role that I'm currently choosing to fulfill? And you need to look at all the variables and decide whether or not there's any harm that you're causing, because if there is, then there's harm that's going to come back to you. So that's what you need to be able to look at, is your decisions about your livelihood. Now, as it relates to being a customer, which doesn't involve this talk, but we can have that conversation too, as it comes to being a customer of something. Yeah, when you learn about companies doing things unethical, you might decide, like, yeah, I'm not interested in doing business with this company. But that's your decision as a consumer, not as a business person, but more as a consumer. And it's wise to make decisions that you're doing business with people who are doing things ethically. But at the same time, you need to strike a middle way with this, because something like this mobile phone, there's probably several hundred vendors that are involved in creating this. If I was to investigate every single vendor and whether or not they're using child labor or are they ethically testing their products or everything like that, you could spend years just researching that. And that's where, as a consumer, you need to be able to make a decision, and you need to ask yourself, is there any wisdom that I know about the people who make this phone that would lead me to not make the decision to purchase this phone with a reasonable amount of looking at this? And the answer might say no. There's nothing that says, and the decision that I'm making is to purchase this phone, and I'm not causing any harm by purchasing this phone. If there's one particular vendor that provides a certain device for this phone that they're using, unethical labor practices, those managers, that business, those are the ones that are going to experience the unwholesome results, because that's the choice that they're making. So the decision here is about your work and how you choose to work. But then there's the other part of it, which is the consumer part, but that doesn't involve the profession itself. That's you as a consumer.
Just a quick follow-up. So, like, to give more detail, like, So I would be doing like communications or marketing, and say for the big supermarket, and it might involve like a celebrity chef or whatever doing a recipe, and sometimes that would include using meat, which I'm very uncomfortable with. Like, would that qualify under this in this example? Because it's basically giving people ways to make meat. It wouldn't only be that. Sometimes it would be vegetables. Sometimes it would be other things, and yeah, similar thing for pharmaceutical company or whatever.
Yeah, if you're involved in the promotion of products like meat, that is business in meat. Even though you're not killing the animal itself, even though you're not involved in the processing of the meat, you're involved in a business that includes meat. So what my advice would be is, if you enjoy marketing and you enjoy these kinds of things, that maybe you might decide to gradually move your livelihood to where you can do that service for a different type of industry. Because there's where we are today, having such a lack of wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha in the world. Many people are doing things that are unwise. And that's why we see so much calamity and so much difficulties in the world, because people don't have this wisdom. There's where we are today. And then there's like where we could go as a society and as a humanity. If individual beings choose to learn and practice these teachings, we can get to a point where this world is so peaceful and so joyful and nobody's causing harm to anybody. We can get to that point. But there's this transitionary period, and that's going to need to be gradual. And it's going to take many hundreds of years, maybe even 1,000 or 2 years, to be able to really get to that point where all of humanity is understanding these teachings, and we're getting to a point where we've essentially created heaven on earth. So where you are on your practice, you need to look at this. And now may or may not be a time for you to move your livelihood. Depending on where you are in your life, you might be like, hey, this is what I need to be doing at this particular time. I'm working on this meditation. I'm working on getting rid of these pollutions of mine, and I'm not ready to address my livelihood yet. And you might be doing all these other things, but you know in your mind, at some point I would like to address this, and I would like to take care of this. And that may not be now. It may be later, or it may be never. That's a decision for you to make. But just understand that by doing this work and promoting the meat, that there is harm that's there. And if you would like to include that, and you already said you feel uncomfortable with it, you haven't really liked it, and because of that, you're not going to feel peaceful and joyful about your livelihood. You can get to peace in all these other parts of your life, but if you maintain that livelihood, you're going to still have that discomfort, because you know in your mind you're promoting this meat. So if you'd like to get to complete enlightenment, where the mind's fully purified and you're completely peaceful and joyful about all aspects of your life, you can already see yourself that you're going to need to move your livelihood. But when or if you ever do that, that's a decision for you to make. Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Questions. First, with regards to the business in living beings, all types of breeding businesses, like dog breeding business or a horse breeding business, all of that would come under business in living beings. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. What about milk from cow, like the business of selling milk from the cow? Same
thing.
It would still come under that?
Yep.
Okay.
Because your livelihood is being sustained off of this living being. It's like it's just like enslaving a human being to do work. Now, human beings, largely, we don't do that anymore. There are some places that still do that, but it's very rare. But now human beings have been very comfortable with enslaving animals to do this. And we kind of think about it, okay, well, it's an animal. And sometimes people look at them as lesser of a being. But if you get to the point where you think of all beings as equal, then we can see that this cow is just as important as we are. And if there was some being on this planet that was a superior and dominant being of us, and they kept us in cages, and they were milking us, or they were taking things away from our body in order to sell or ingest themselves, we wouldn't stand for it. We would all revolt. We would try to come together and kind of take over and dominate this more dominant being. But because animals don't have the capacity to do that, they don't do it. But if somebody did it to us, we wouldn't stand for it. But yet we do it to other beings. This is the ironic thing that we don't look at when we're in the darkness and our mind is not awake to this higher consciousness and being able to understand the harm that we're causing in the world. We keep causing this harm. And this is why we see things like our environment struggling and things like this because of the unwise decisions we're making. This is also why we see disease and illness. Like we all just lived through COVID. This came from what people think to be a animal market that was selling animals. And now the disease went from the animal world into the human world. And this has happened not just with COVID, but HIV, swine flu, bird flu, all these viruses are making their way from the animal realm into the human realm. And while we've come up with vaccines for these things, which is helpful, we haven't solved the problem. The problem is that our lack of wisdom, that we continue to do the things that we're doing with the animals. And now the more we interact with animals, the more opportunity the viruses have to jump over to us. And there's a whole litany of viruses waiting in the animal realm for us. And if we keep making these unwise decisions to interact with the animals the way that we have, it's going to be another virus and another virus and another virus. It's going to come into the human world. So while it's great that we have these vaccines for people who are interested in using them, we haven't solved the problem, because the root of the problem is our craving, our anger, our ill will towards these animals, and our ignorance, our unknowing of true reality. When we clean that up in our mind, we'll get to the point where animals go be animals and humans go be humans, and we can appreciate them and we can enjoy them from afar, but we're not interacting with them so closely with viruses being able to make their way into the human world. But as long as we keep doing that, we're going to keep experiencing these kind of illnesses over and over and over again.
Yes. And how about a horse riding school, like riding horses?
Same thing. It's a business in living beings, that you're using this living being in order to sustain your life. Mm-hmm.
And just as a customer or a student going for horse riding classes, how would you consider that?
It would be up to you to decide for those things. Like, I used to ride horses in the past when I was young. I used to work on a farm. We used to actually catch animals and slit their throats and chop them up and sell them and all these kinds of things. I worked on a farm when I was young, and I experienced my karma from that. I experienced a whole lot of unwholesome karma from that. And I used to ride horses, and we would round up cows and all these kinds of things. And I experienced my karma from those kinds of things. At this point in my life, knowing everything I know, I wouldn't go ride a horse. I wouldn't teach my son to ride a horse. We went to Egypt 2 years ago. My wife was really interested in riding a camel. That was her choice. She didn't end up riding it. She just sat on it and took pictures with it. I wasn't interested in that at all. So everybody has to make their own decisions. But for me, with the amount of loving kindness and compassion I have for all beings, not just animals, I'm not interested in sitting on an animal's back and having it tote me around for fun. Even though I did that in the past, and yes, it was enjoyable. At the end of the day, I know that I was causing harm to this animal. It wasn't doing it based on its own free will. It was doing it based on me forcing it to do this and having trained it to do this. Animals by themselves wouldn't cart humans around. It's only because of our training and dominance of this animal that it's willing to do that. And then we give it food and water and shelter and kind of, enslave it to do our things. But nowadays are so intelligent that we've come up with machines to do all the things that animals have once done for us. We have tractors, we have automobiles, we have motorcycles. We don't need to use animals anymore to do things that we used to do in the past, because we've evolved past that. So getting to this higher consciousness and be able to see these things is an evolution of our species, where humanity can get to a point where we're not causing harm to animals and we're not causing harm to each other. But we need to be able to see that, because if I was to take my son to go horseback riding, for example, I would be teaching him to cause harm to another animal, right? Or to another being. Or if I took him fishing, right? Like I used to do this growing up. I used to go fishing all the time. I enjoyed it so much. But yeah, I was causing a lot of harm to some beings. And if I did that with him, it would be teaching him to cause harm to other beings. And then he's going to be doing that in other situations too. He's probably going to go to school and poke his friends and try to fight his friends or do those things with me. And this is the unwholesome results of my decision to take him fishing, for example. So all those things, I've done those things in the past, but I know they don't lead to wholesome results. So I've stopped doing them now. But each person has to decide, for themselves about these kinds of things. So I wouldn't do those things, but whether someone else does is up to them.
You gave around calling a police with regards to a customer. Where would you put generosity in this case? For example, I can say, if I would like to be generous to this customer, maybe I'm not calling a police because I feel it might harm her. But I can also see it's because certain things that she has done which might not be beneficial for the business, for others. So where would you draw a line?
Yeah.
Where you actually say this is generosity versus this is somewhere I have to take an action even though it might harm the other person.
Yeah. So this person was causing harm. So that's why harm came to them, right? They were being bitter and hostile and harsh, and they were running out of the business without making amends to their responsibility to pay the fee. So now there's an employee that's done a service that they get commission. That's how they get paid. They don't get hourly services or hourly fee unless they get paid by the customer. We have to pay rent, we have to pay electric. I have a front desk employee that I have to pay. So if you're going to practice generosity, it needs to come from you, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. So a customer who's being bitter and harsh and hostile and running out of the business, they're causing harm. So now this harm came to them that the police was called on them. If I would like to practice generosity, which I did in the business all the time, I would donate to local schools and charities and stuff like this. There were sometimes students, because we also had a massage school, there were sometimes students who would come to me and say, hey, I really would like to take your classes. This is going to help me professionally a whole lot, but I just don't have the money to be able to afford the classes. And I would say, you know what? You can take this class at no cost. No worries. You can take it for free. And they were surprised that I did this. But I did this with a few students because they needed it for their professional growth. And I didn't expect anything in return for those situations. So you need to practice the middle way yourself. And you need to, if you're making money, you need to also be practicing generosity, but it should be something that's initiated from you, not because someone's being bitter and harsh and hostile. When someone's bitter, harsh, and hostile, if you were to practice generosity with them, this is just teaching them that your bitterness and harshness and hostility led to some wholesome result. So keep being bitter and harsh and hostile and leaving out of the business, and people will just practice generosity with you. This is showing them the opposite of the natural laws. You would like to be sure that they can see the natural laws really closely, because if you every time someone's bitter, harsh, and hostile and run out of your business and you're just practice generosity with them, you're going to have that happening over and over and over and over again. And this isn't the kind of behavior that you would like to incentivize. In fact, if we take it away from a business environment, you see this in some families where like a child, like a teenager, will be bitter, harsh, and hostile to their parents, and their parents go buy them a mobile phone, or they take them to the movies, or, they're trying to appease their child. And now the child learns, if I want anything from mom and dad, let me just be bitter, harsh, and hostile. They're going to feel guilty, and they're going to take me to the movies, or they're going to buy me a new mobile phone. And next thing you know, 16, 18, 20-year-old child, they're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to their parents over and over and over and over and over again. And that's not what you're looking to incentivize and teach a child, for example. But this is the same thing in a business environment, because you're teaching people all the time how you would like them to interact with you. And you would like to function in a way that's wise, and it would be very unwise to practice generosity with someone who's being bitter, harsh, and hostile and aggressive. Again, you're practicing generosity without any expectation of anything in return. So you're not expecting people to be polite to you, but to see someone who's bitter, harsh, and hostile and then give them a free service because of that, you've just taught them, be bitter, harsh, and hostile to me, and I'll give you what you want. And you're just going to have a bunch of people that are bitter, harsh, and hostile to you over and over and over again. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was thinking about this. What's your advice for the beginners, for people that is just like start and that you're just learning now? Because when I think about the teachings, Buddha's teachings, those are really beautiful and it's amazing to have a life like this.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a beginner and when you think about the job, like probably he can quit to this job now and he knows that maybe it's not the right way to do this job, but he can quit in this moment, but he's still trying to have a better life, to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think that you have to follow the teachings word by word in this reality, in this moment, sometimes it feels like it's a bit hard. So can we just adapt as much as we can with the teachings and to do the best that we can?
Mm-hmm. So what you do is you do gradual training, gradual practice, and you experience gradual progress. So it's not a matter of snapping your fingers and instantly doing all these things today. It's not possible to do that. So what you do is you gradually train your mind, you gradually practice the teachings, and you gradually progress. So that's why everything that I share with you about these teachings, I always say it's up to you. About the horse riding or, him changing his job, all of you guys have to make your own decisions at the right time. But what I'm doing is I'm sharing with you the wisdom of the natural laws. I'm teaching you this natural law and I'm saying, hey, this is how this is going to affect you. But whether you do it or not is up to you, right? So if we can use you, John, as an example, this is a great example, is he may choose to wait 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Who knows? He may wait 10, 15 years before he decides to change his job. And that's a decision for him to make. But at least he knows that discomfort that he experiences as a result of the work that he does, he knows where it's coming from. And then when he's ready to address it, he may or may not address it. And there's other people besides John that have these same situations with their livelihood. So you can't just snap your fingers and instantly implement the teachings. You need to gradually integrate them into your life. And that's something that I'm going to teach you after this next topic. I'm going to teach you how to integrate the teachings into your life on a day-by-day basis. So that way you can gradually train the mind, gradually practice, and gradually progress. It's not hurry up and get to enlightenment today. This is going to take you multiple years because you need to cultivate the wisdom and you need to gradually make shifts in your life. If you make too many abrupt shifts in your life, it's going to cause you difficulties because your mind doesn't like change. In the unenlightened state, it craves permanence. So if you start making a bunch of abrupt changes in your life, you're going to feel very uncomfortable. So you'd like to do all this stuff gradually and slowly. Have you guys ever noticed how Thai people drive? For the most part, they drive very slow here in Chiang Mai, and they do lane changes very slow typically. They almost barely make their way into the next lane. Everything's gradual, everything. And it even comes down into their driving and the way that they drive. They just make gradual changes because everybody needs to shift on the road. So when a car is pulling out onto a major road, it does it so slowly, it's almost crawling out into the road so that all the other drivers can see it coming and start shifting. And that's what you would like to do, is start making gradual shifts in your life. But you use this as wisdom to be able to help you make those gradual shifts. And that way you can know that you're on the right path because you've learned it, you've reflected on it to independently verify it. And now when you practice it, you gradually integrate it into your life. But I'm going to give you some more specific guidance here in a moment. Okay. So let me move into this next topic. We're just going to keep moving on. Even though it's usually the time we're taking a mid-morning break, these next two topics won't take me very long, maybe 10, 15 minutes to teach you everything, and we'll actually be done for the day, and we can talk about what to do from there. So this next one is called The Art of the Friendly No, How to Say No Without Saying No. This is just something I'm going to teach you, and if you guys would like to play around with it, we can. When you're interacting with people who are in the unenlightened state and who are off the path to enlightenment, they can very easily get triggered based on their cravings, desires, attachments. They can experience painful feelings really easily based on their cravings, desires, attachments. They'll get the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the agitation, the annoyance, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the stress, the anxiety. You even get those things and you're actually on the path. But someone who's off the path, they can easily get triggered. And this word no, tends to really trigger a lot of people, right? Because they have this craving, they really want something from you. And if you say no, they tend to get very angry. And when they get angry, they don't realize that their anger is coming from their own mind. They're going to attribute their painful feelings to you. And when they attribute their painful feelings to you, they're either going to push you away. This is aversion. They're going to push you out of their life, and they don't want to be around you anymore. They're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're going to start putting their expectations on you and trying to control you, right? This is, if you understand that this is what your mind does in the unenlightened state, other people's mind's going to do exactly the same thing. And what the Buddha is teaching you, among other things, is he's teaching you how to navigate the world of all these unenlightened beings, that by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to navigate the world of all these unenlightened beings, and you'll be able to maintain your practice in exactly the way you conduct yourself, and there's less and less likely of an opportunity for people around you to get angry. I would say in my life at this point, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, somebody might get a little bit angry or bitter or harsh. And it's usually a brand new student who showed up for the first time. They hear me say something and they just fly off the handle. Like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, this person was asking me about the war. And I said that it's very unfortunate that we have wars in the world right now. And this one student just went berserk. You know, they thought that me saying the war was unfortunate was rude and disrespectful, right? They had something in their mind, right? So they were craving me to say things in a certain way. So in my situation, I was practicing right speech, but they still got upset. They still got angry, right? So even when you're enlightened, and I'm not saying that I'm enlightened, because that's not what somebody would normally say who's enlightened. They wouldn't say they were enlightened. But even when you're enlightened, there's the potential for someone to get angry and frustrated around you. But it's very rare that this actually occurs. So if you're practicing in the way that the Buddha teaches, it's very unlikely and very minimal times that someone will get angry and irritated or frustrated around you, because you're functioning in a way that people's cravings aren't getting triggered. So this art of the friendly no, how to say no without saying no, is something that's going to help you to be able to ensure you don't create an environment where someone's mind can easily get triggered. They will associate those painful feelings to you. They will push you away. They'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, and they'll put their expectations on you. So in a work environment, but also in your personal environment, someone can do things like inviting you to a party, or inviting you to some event or something like this, or offering you something. And if you say no, it's like shutting them down. And if they have a craving, they're going to experience the painful feelings. So there's a way to say no without saying no. So I'll teach this to you guys. So the problem here is that the unenlightened mind doesn't typically like hearing the word no. They also don't typically like these words either: can't, don't, and won't, right? So if their mind gets angry for any reason whatsoever, their mind is causing it. But you would like to practice in a way that provides the least opportunity for their mind to become triggered or angry. So it doesn't mean that you can't tell somebody no, right? If you need to use the word no, just use the word no, right? Particularly if somebody's doing something physical, sexually or otherwise towards you, you might need to say, no, stop that, right? You might need to do that kind of thing. But in other situations, it's just like someone's inviting you to a party or something like this. You might decide to practice in the way that I'm going to teach you here. It's best not to use these words and instead find alternatives. So let me give you an example to this. Let's just say somebody invited me to a party and they're like, hey, or actually let's use this. A student invited me to a wedding. They were in Nepal and they were getting married and they were inviting me to the wedding. And I said, thank you so much for the invitation. That's very kind of you to think of me in a way that you would like to invite me to your wedding. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend because I'm here in Thailand, but I really appreciate the invite. And this tells me that you really think of me in a fond way, and I really appreciate that. And then they wrote back and they're like, teacher, I knew you weren't going to come. I just wanted to invite you just so you know that I was inviting you and I felt warmly about you or something like this, right? And of course, they took it very well, right? But you can have situations where someone's not on the path. Like maybe they invite you to a party and you say, no, I can't come. Or no, I've got something else to do tomorrow. And now all of a sudden they're angry and frustrated. So even in this situation, say like a party, you can say, oh, I really appreciate that invite to the party. If I can come, I will let you know. Right? I haven't said no. Right? And I might firmly know in my mind that I'm not going. I might know that when they invite me. But instead of saying, no, I can't come, and here's all the reasons why, to justify why I can't come, you don't have to do that. You can just say, oh, I really appreciate that invite. It's really kind of you to invite me to your party. If I'm able to come, I will let you know. Right? This is a way to do this. You're not lying, because if I can come, I will let you know. As of right now, I know in my mind I can't come, so therefore I'm not letting them know, right? So this isn't a lie. This is just being accurate about the way that you're speaking and making sure that you're not using the word no. And there's all these different variations. You're going to need to practice this several times in order to get comfortable with it, because you're not going to be able to just say the same exact statement every single time in every situation. You're going to need to have some different variations. And what you're going to find is that this is really going to help you to keep harmonious relationships in your life. Because if you tell people no, that you can't come, if they have a craving for you to come, they're going to get angry. They're going to push you away. They're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or they're going to start trying to force you to come. Come on, we can't have a party without you. You're always the life of the party. Come on, please come. Will you please come? We want you to come. Like, oh, you're a party pooper, right? You're going to hear all these different things, and now you're stuck in this situation, right? So you would like to be able to practice in a way that you don't end up in these kinds of situations. So right now what I'm doing is I'm teaching you. I'm sharing this with you. You can reflect on this, but then when you start practicing it, you're going to see that it works really well. I call this the art of the friendly no, how to say no without saying no. And there's been other students that have heard me teach this before, and they're like, oh, this doesn't sound right. It sounds like I'm lying. It sounds like this, that, or the other thing. But then just recently, one of those students that did this from the last class 3 months ago, he wrote me. He said, David, I did what you said, and it worked magically. He's like, thank you so much for teaching me that. He actually sat right there too. He was very adamantly against what I was teaching. He was like, oh, this is not right. We shouldn't be doing it like this. He was telling me all these different things. And then he just wrote me and he was like, oh my goodness, like this worked magically. So this is different than what you currently do. This is not maybe something that you currently do, or maybe some of you actually you might be doing this already, right? And you know how well this works. It works really, really well. You might need to think about this. You might need to reflect on it. You probably need to practice it a few times. And then once you do, you'll see that it works really, really well. Okay. So sometimes what we do here is we kind of role play and we kind of pretend, but sometimes we don't. But based on the time, I think we'll just go forward. You guys understand what I'm teaching you here, and you might decide to practice this. Here in a little bit, I'm going to invite you guys to go to a group lunch, and maybe some of you guys will practice this. And you might say, oh, thank you so much for inviting me to the group lunch, but I'll let you know if I can come. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever you say, you might come. You might come to the group lunch, right? So it's up to you, right? So this is something that I'm teaching you. When people ask to borrow money from you, this might be something you might need to do. I didn't know this information. And when I was 23, I had my best friend came to me. He was still in college. I graduated the year before. He came to me and he was like, David, can I borrow some money? I was like, how much do you need? He's like, $300. I need to pay my tuition at school. I don't have enough money. Right. And I was very tight on money because I just graduated from school. And I asked him, I said, what did you do last night? And he said, oh, we went partying. We went out to the bar. And I was like, really? How many drinks did you have? He's like, oh, I had like 10 drinks. I was like, oh, well, why didn't you use that money for your tuition? And that was the wrong thing to say, because I never saw that guy after that, right? And he was like a really good friend. I never saw him and never heard from him ever after that. Whereas if I knew this information, we could probably still be friends today, right? He pushed me away. He felt painful feelings. He thought his best friend was going to let him borrow money. But what I told him is I said, if you don't pay your tuition, you're going to go home and live with your parents. If I don't pay my tuition, I get kicked out of my my condo and I'm not going to have a place to live. I can't go home to my parents because at that time, me and my mom still weren't getting along, right? I can't go home to my parents. You can go home to your parents, right? So it was the wrong thing to say. So I lost a friend. Right? So what you would like to do is practice in a way that you can have harmonious relationships with everybody. And these are just some examples. And sometimes students like to give examples. That's why I say examples from students, that sometimes students like to kind of role play this a little bit. So if you'd ever like to talk about this privately or otherwise, you can feel comfortable to talk to me and I'll help you with this. Okay, but just moving on here, let's talk about continued support, because this is going to get to the heart of your question. This is how you integrate the teachings into your life on a day-by-day basis. Ways that you can make sure that you're consistently learning and growing and developing on the path to enlightenment. The first thing is you would like to be attending weekly classes, either in person or online. I set up in such a way that you don't have to actually be here to learn, because I live stream. You can come in through Zoom. You can learn however you like. So if you're regularly attending, we have programs that I'm going to teach you about here in a moment that you can be regularly attending in-person classes or online classes. And then you can take these in-depth learning opportunities like this, like a 5-day course or a retreat, as needed, as you would like to. And that's going to bring in a lot of information in a short period of time. If you get this book, this first book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, if you read this 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, this is really all you need. You don't need, you need other books, but you don't need to read more than 10 or 20 minutes a day. If you sit down and you read an hour or two, that's going to be too much information for you to bring in at one time. It's kind of like taking a big bite out of pizza and trying to chew it. It's going to be hard to digest it. You like to take little bites and then chew and swallow. That's what you would like to be able to do. In this first book, you can get it from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com for free. You can download it. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get them on Amazon. So you like to be reading this book to get started slowly but surely. Then you like to develop a practice of generosity, where you're frequently giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. And you like to be doing this daily, and make sure you don't have any expectation for anything in return. You need to frequently be doing this practice of giving. And sometimes it can just be 5 seconds here, 10 seconds here. You're going into the store, you see someone's behind you, hold the door. Right? That's some generosity. Somebody drops their wallet on the ground. Excuse me, ma'am, you dropped this. This is yours. That's generosity, right? So you can find many ways to practice generosity, and it doesn't have to always be money. So you got to find this middle way where you're not overextending yourself and practicing extensively, where you don't have the basic resources and the time that you need for your own life, but you also aren't interested in being over here where you're selfish and you're not sharing at all. So if you come to the middle where you're practicing your generosity each day with the people around you, this is going to train your mind to let go, let go, let go. Then you would like to work on your moral conduct. Using the Eightfold Path as your guide, you would like to improve your speech, your actions, and your livelihood, gradually building that up. It's kind of like you have a broken pipe and you're spewing water all over the place. You're not going to go clean up the water first. You're going to go shut down the pipe. So you like to shut down those unwise decisions that you're making about your moral conduct. And if you can shut that down, then you can clean up the mess that you've made with the various relationships that you have, right? So you need to shut that pipe down first. So that's why you're working on improving your moral conduct. And the Eightfold Path is giving you the guidance of how to do that. Then you'd like to build up your meditation practice of 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And this can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that. You're going to need to gradually take away things like social media. If you're doing things like that extensively, you'd like to bring that down to moderation. If you're scrolling on Facebook for 3 hours a day, bring that down to 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. If you're watching YouTube videos endlessly, you'd like to bring that down. Maybe do that for 15, 20, 30 minutes, right? So that way you have more time to do things like learning with the classes, with the reading, with the meditations, and things like that. And then as you need help, you can seek guidance. There's essentially 4 ways to get guidance. You can ask questions in classes, any of these classes, whether you're here or you're online, you can ask questions. You can post in our Facebook group. That's where we have a place where I will answer your questions. Nobody else will answer your questions. It's just me. So you can post in the Facebook group. You can send me a private message. I use all the messaging apps and email and all those kinds of things. Or you can schedule personal guidance, either online. You can get online and schedule, and then we'll meet in Zoom because maybe you're traveling. But if you're here or you're in any other city that I might travel to, you can just send me a message and we can coordinate a time, and we can spend some time together at a smoothie shop or at a park or at the temple or wherever it is that you would like to meet. So those are the 4 ways to get help. In class, you can post in our Facebook group, you can send private messages, you can schedule personal guidance. Okay, so this is the way you integrate the teachings, just slowly but surely trickle them into your life. I don't drink coffee anymore, but I think you guys know the analogy of drip coffee. When you're dripping coffee, you're dripping water into coffee grounds. It produces a really high quality coffee, right? So you might just have like to drip these teachings into the mind, where if you're trying to force it or shove it like an espresso, sure, espresso is very high quality, but that's coffee, right? This is your mind. You'd like to drip these teachings into your mind, okay? So here's the way that you get all access to all of these teachings. So the books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and quizzes, they're all available from our website. That's like a central hub where you can get access to all the resources. And you can also find all the classes, courses, and retreats, the in-person and online opportunities. We have these 2 ongoing programs. You guys would be completely fine to enter into the group learning program, and we actually just restarted it this past Sunday. So if you guys started joining now, you'd be right at the beginning of the program. In fact, if you'd like to see this past Sunday's class, it was recorded. It's on our YouTube channel. It's on the Facebook page or Facebook group. It's even on our podcast already. You can attend that way through the recordings if you like. So you can attend the live classes, which are Sunday at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. So depending on what time zone you're in, you'll have to look, because if you're like in North, Central, or South America, this would be like Saturday night and Sunday morning, right? Because it's all based on Thai time zone. But this group learning program, it goes through this first book, the Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Every Sunday, I go chapter by chapter by chapter over a 7-month program, and you can just trickle the teachings in weekly into the mind. And then on Wednesdays of that program, 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I teach meditation, and I do meditation with you guys and open up to questions. So you can attend it here in the mornings at 9 a.m., or you can attend online either at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. So that's an option for you. And then this Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English Study Group, that's where we go from volumes 2 through 13 in a year and a half. We go all the way through that. But usually students build a really nice foundation or framework for themselves first in either the group learning program, or they'll take the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course first. Then they'll go into the Pali Canon and English Study Group. So essentially, if you do the group learning program and the Pali Canon and English Study Group, that's about 2 years worth of learning. And sometimes people do that more than once. So you could do that more than once if you like, and read the book more than once, because it's not something you can just read one time and you know everything. I've had some students that have been studying with me for 5 or 6 years at this point. They tell me they've read this book 8 or 12 times, and they say every single time they learn something new from the book. So you'd like to read it multiple times. And these programs are going to guide you through that. And if you can attend live, great. But if not, they're all recorded. So you can actually attend through the recordings and go at your own self pace if you like. Then, as I mentioned, there's personal guidance that you can schedule online, or you can just send me a message and we can meet either here or any other city that I'm traveling to. And then this is the Facebook group that you can join if you like. Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Some people, they don't really do Facebook, which is fine, but sometimes people just open an ID. They don't even post on their own personal profile. They just use it to come into this Facebook group, because not only can you ask questions in there, but you can also see the questions other people ask, and you can see the answers that I give, and you can learn that way as well. Okay, so these are all the options for you, and it's all offered openly and freely. There's never a time where I'm going to ask you to pay anything, ever. So you're always welcome to come in and learn any of this stuff. The only thing standing in your way is your own dedication and your own diligence. I've removed all the obstacles. You don't even physically have to be in Chiang Mai. During the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to be physically with the Buddha. There was no other options, right? But nowadays, you guys travel, you're all over the place. I've removed all the obstacles. All you need to do is apply your time, effort, energy, and your dedication, and you'll be able to gradually make your way to learning and growing so that you can improve the quality of your mind and get closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. Okay, so any questions on this? Anything you guys would like to ask? Okay, let me see if we have anything online. Okay, no questions online. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just end up our class by sharing a real heartfelt thank you with all of you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn the teachings of the Buddha. You see our class has slowly grown over the week, and it's been nice to have all of you guys joining, whether you've been here the whole week or you've been joining regularly, or you just joined maybe starting on Wednesday when we had our public class. So thank you for your interest to learn and practice these teachings. Thank you for anything that you've done to contribute to my ability to share these teachings. If you've taken out the trash, if you've swept the floor, if you've cleaned the bathroom, if you've given some kind of donation to be able to help pay for the electric or water or anything like that, I would like to thank you for your generosity and your willingness to support what I'm doing here, because essentially what you're doing is you're helping me to help you. That's what I'm doing here, is I'm helping you to be able to learn this path. So thank you for helping me to help you. If you would like, now that we're ending up our class, we can go out and have some lunch together. I can make some recommendations to you guys. I have some options that have meat. They have vegetarian, they have vegan, they have a nice little garden that we can sit around, and it's right here in the city that we can either walk to, or some people have motorbikes, or you can take Grab over there. It's a place that we normally go after this class because it has a full menu that is available for all of us, and we can sit back and talk and relax and have some great conversations. So if you guys would like to go have a group lunch, the place I would recommend is called Blue Diamond. Some of you guys might have been there already. It's in the northeast corner of the city, and it's a good place for us to be able to go and hang out. And like I said, they have a nice little garden there as well, that we can kind of sit back and relax and enjoy some time together. That's an option of something we can do. If you'd like to go home and take a rest or go do something else, feel free to do that. You can use the art of the friendly no if you like. You don't have to. Don't worry, I won't get upset with you if you choose not to come. Sometimes people like to do a little bit of cleaning before we leave because all of us are here. We've been using the temple all week long. These temples are like a community center. They don't belong to anybody. This isn't my classroom. It doesn't belong to me. Instead, the Thai people have entrusted us with this classroom to be able to use it for our benefit. And since we've been here, as you guys might have thought and saw, like when you showed up on Monday, it was quite clean because the students before you had cleaned it. So if you guys would like to do a little bit of light cleaning, maybe 5-10 minutes, we could all help out, maybe clean the bathroom, sweep the floors, take out the trash, fill up the water, sweep the hallway, things like this. It'd probably take all of 10 minutes with all of us helping out. All the supplies are in this room right here. And then there's some supplies at the bathroom. I'm not expecting you to clean. I'm not wanting you to clean. I'm not even asking you to clean. I'm just sharing with you that this is a nice thing that some students choose to do before we depart from a class. So if you'd like to help out, this would be very much appreciated by the students that are coming in for the next classes. So again, thank you for your interest to learn, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future learning event. Take care and have a lovely rest of your day, whatever you choose to do. Okay? Be well and take care. Mm-hmm.